Do you know how to do a CSRD workshop properly? In this podcast episode, I'm going to talk to Natalia, who has a lot of experience with workshops and especially with CSRD workshops. And she's going to share the 5 steps that you need to do a CSRD workshop properly. Enjoy. Hey, Natalia. And first of all, thank you so much for taking the time. For those of the listeners that don't know you yet, can you tell us a little bit about yourself and what brought you here?
Well, I think what brought me here can be divided in 3 moments. Background in industrial design and some work experience with social innovation in Bogota, a master's and some work experience in Copenhagen, and my immersion into the CSRD world after moving to Munich. So I would say that I discover a love for facilitation and designing process and tools that bring people together while I was in Colombia working with social innovation and everything that was related to structure and executing projects, but of course, center into the people. And then in Copenhagen during my master's, it was everything about how can you design workshops to create sustainable solutions. So how a workshop can facilitate the negotiation of certain solutions or processes and projects between different stakeholders and also across companies. And then once in Munich, then it's a different entirely level of complexity, of course. And just delve into how can you structure perfect negotiation spaces or workshops to bring people together into a really complicated process. So I start working with a small consultancy where I design the structure and basically the how-to on how to train and develop workshops for CSRD. So I just bridge my knowledge in facilitation with the complexity of the CSRD and the ESRS.
Yeah, that's super interesting to hear how you had like different stages that all helped you to like acquire different skills that you can now use to like bring companies towards more sustainability. And definitely in the CSRD, we need more skills and more progress around this. So maybe let's dive into the topic a little bit more, because as far as I understand it, now you use the skill that you acquired with the workshops and you combine it with the skill of the CSRD. So you're basically helping or know how to help with CSRD workshops, correct?
Yes. So I will say that the approach that I always focus on is that there are humans behind all of this. And they have their like workload and their times and so on. And the CSRD usually is a process, an add-on to their task. So the whole focus on how to create a good CSRD workshop of a series of workshops is how to make it easier, for them. So I would say like the purpose of the CSRD workshop is just to equip organizations and the participants of all these activities with the tools, the knowledge, and the collaboration framework to navigate the complexities together. So a lot of collaboration, it's involved. And this is crucial for helping companies understanding their obligations, identify material sustainability topics, and structure the reporting process effectively. So, of course, has different purposes, education, but also the identification of the material sustainability topics. Also analyzing what it's missing, how to fill up those gaps, and to develop a plan where everyone has ownership of what they need to do. So I will say that that's basically how I wish, or how ideally this process goes. It's never like a straight line. It's always more like a roller coaster, but I feel like the purpose.
Yeah, I 100% agree that we need like more simplicity within the CSRD. We already have like enough topics that are super complicated and where you can just like spend a lot of time to like understand it. So maybe to bring everybody onto the same page, because some might know when to use like a CSRD workshop and when it's applicable and when not. Can you maybe just very top level view explain us like when it makes sense to like apply a CSRD workshop and when does it help companies?
So I will say the earlier, the better. So early preparations always reduce last minute stress. And I will say like the when is always linked to the stage of the process. So if it's an early stage, for instance, it's all about education, right? So it's about like telling the people what the CSRD is, what the ESRS entails. Then it's also linked to, I think, workshops peak during the double materiality because you need to bring different stakeholders in it. So I feel like the workshops are linked to each stage of the process, but of course, you need to start planning that early on. Of course, it's just depending on a lot of factors, but it's always linked to double materiality assessment, the gap analysis, and the action plan development for it.
Mm-hmm.
So I would say that, yeah, always avoid last minute stress. So if you can foresee that, for instance, this is the first, I would say, quality assurance process that your company is going on, then you need to start tomorrow, basically, engaging, of course, the leadership. If this is the second time in a round, then you know how it went. If you're alone, also depends on you're alone. If you need external help, so I feel like just know when is your deadline and assume that everything, if it's the first time, will take a little bit longer. People don't know what they don't know, so it's always extra steps there.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I also always give the advice to like start as early as possible because there are like so many things will come up that you don't know about yet. So just like make sure that you start early and then things can still come up and you can meet the deadline. But okay, let's dive into like the CSRD workshop. Can you maybe give us an overview about like what are the different steps? Like if let's say I've never done this before, I've never seen something like this before, like how can you like in a few sentences explain me what are the steps of a CSRD workshop?
I would say like the way a CSRD workshop usually looks is a structured interactive session designed to educate participants on the CSRD requirements. And of course, as an add-on, it's conducting activities or hands-on activities to understand their applicability. So support the development of the actionable plans for compliance. And it brings different internal stakeholders or in some cases external consultants or advisors to collaborate. So from a content point of view, workshops are definitely linked to uh, things like the introduction of the CSRD that we were talking, the materiality assessment, gap analysis, action plan development, and of course, a wrap up for the next steps. But I want to focus on how to create a collaborative sessions to facilitate the process. And I will say that this has 5 components. So
Mm-hmm.
understanding your role and the level of ambition around you is a first, I will not say step, but as a huge frame. The second is like preparations and engaging the right stakeholders. The
Mm-hmm.
third, craft the content for the audience. And fourth, I would say that create a safe space for collaboration. And finally, but not least important, is create flexible and well-rounded structures that you there was always something coming up and you are prepared and ready to be a little bit flexible. It's always better.
Okay. That actually sounds quite straightforward. Like you make sure that you prepare everything, get everything together, get everybody like on the right table, and then you have like the 5 steps and you go through them. And this is then, yeah, sounds like a piece of cake. But maybe let's dive into the single topics a little bit more specific because I can imagine that there are like some pitfalls or some things to look out for companies.
So, so the first component I would say to understand your role and your position and the level of environment, the level of ambition in your environment. So
Mm-hmm.
this will give you clarity, focus, and expectations management because it will define the vision and set the tone. So also frame the objectives early on. So there are some questions to navigate this, but this is the moment where you set the realistic expectations by focusing on how to maximize the resources that you have. If this is the first time, embrace the learning curve. This is a process, so it will take a lot of iterations, and there are some questions to navigate, right? So the first one that I always like to ask is this a compliance-driven process, a transformational project, or a learning initiative? Do we have to do it, or do we want to do it? Basically, that sets the tone right, and that gives you an idea of what management wants. And who are your allies in this process? If this is something that started top to bottom, or someone else approaches you to this as a, let's say that you're a sustainability manager. Well, do you need, so what influence do you have, basically? Because that will let you know, will give you clues on how many resources can you pull in, and why does this knowledge matter, and which impact will it have, right? So it just gives you like a frame. So I would say like that first component is just sets the tone and the vision and the expectations regarding the process and of course the workshop itself. So if it's an educational one, then you know that you don't have to dive deeper or like dig deeper into the topic, but kind of like engage people early on, because you don't have to do the report until 2 years or so, but you want to start getting people into the vibe. If it's something that you need to do for this year, for instance, then that's a different tone, that's a different expectations as well. So it's just depending on that. So, but that gives you the framework. The frame, I would say.
Yeah, okay, that makes a lot of sense, because I first thought that like only companies that like need to do the CSRD report right now like are doing it, and therefore like the goal or ambition would be clear the same. But it makes sense, like there are also companies starting a bit early or trying to like explore different things. So okay, yeah, definitely makes sense that there are like different set of objectives that companies can take.
Definitely. And sometimes it's an initiative that had started in other countries where it has been this process already 2 years, for instance, and then they are asking their partners like, okay, you need to also do it. Or you see a competitor, like it just sets the vibe, I would say, like how urgent it is, or how easygoing can be.
Okay.
Then the second part, I would say the preparations and engaging the right stakeholders. And this is not to do the workshop itself, but to start mapping out your allies. I always said that. In a lot of organizations, you have people who back you up, and you need to have these people on your radar, because then the process is going to be easier. And when I said the preparations and the stakeholders, I mean this to contextualize the knowledge regarding the relevance for the participants and their goals, right? Roles and goals. So the CEO doesn't need to know the same as the HR manager needs to know, right? So you need to start like seeing like, okay, who needs to be involved, when, how, but also identify the knowledge gaps. So are you going to conduct this? Are you going to be the leader of this? Do you need external help? So if you need external expertise, that involve other steps, right? And gather the necessary resources. So do you have a software in place? What kind of documents? And I'm not saying like database documents. I'm saying like, do you have already templates or a document that you can put in the middle of the conversation on the workshop, and that different people can participate and chip in? So visual frameworks, a lot of maps. Maps always help. Excel is a huge thing. So are you basically in this, to navigate this, the step is just, are you equipped with the right knowledge and tools and people? Like, do you have those resources already in place? And then who needs to be involved, and how will they contribute? Because again, this is an additional process to a lot of people. So I would say that preparations and engaging the right stakeholders will give you efficiency, the knowledge, accessibility, and the foundation for success, so that everyone is there.
Okay. Yeah, it makes sense to like basically have a clear structure of like who's involved and how are they involved, and just to like write this down. I feel like the term stakeholder mapping is always a big term where you're like, "Oof, how am I going to be able to like get all of this down?" But yeah, definitely like it's necessary to like at least know the directions and like, okay, who's there, who can I talk to, how do I talk to them, to then like later on get all the necessary information together.
Exactly. And for instance, if here the allies are really important, this is like a team effort. So if you have the head of finance already in and then said like, yeah, I have two people from my team that would be great for it, then you know that they would be key to invite it later on in the process. This is just before like when you're deciding, that you can count on them. And there are also I would say that there are also people in different departments that they're just curious and they're okay to chip in 2 hours of their time to help you, to facilitate, to if you have designers, they're great. Like if you have people around that can be your allies in this process, that you can, of course, step in into them with the right tools, of course. So yeah.
Yeah, yeah, makes a lot of sense.
So following to that one and knowing basically to who are you talking to and who are you involving, I would say to craft the content for the audience. So as a sustainability fun girl, I tend to fall in the mistake of going too deep into topics that not everyone is passionate about, and then it just gets overwhelming. So usually sustainability managers of people who have been, 2 years of their life or 4 years in their lives being educated into this topic, they get really, really into the complex, into the nitty gritty. And of course, that's hard because, like I always say, Linda from HR, she doesn't care about half of the things you're talking about. She just wants to know what it what entails, what is her role there. So I would say like make the content accessible, relevant, and meaningful for diverse participants. And this will, of course, the benefit of this is retention, engagement, and actionability. So how they can apply that to the roles. And this can be done by simplifying concepts with analogies, give them real examples of how this looks in the company or interactive activities. Again, I always, a lot of friends, they always tell me in this process, people don't know what they don't know. Like we're asking new things most of the times. And yeah, this is to avoid overwhelming participants by using small and digestible sessions. So how do you tailor the content for different participants? Who needs to know what, when, and how are you going to deliver that? And how we participants activate this knowledge, how they learn this knowledge. That's why I say like the documents at the beginning, it's not just to collect data, but also to add, to apply what they have learned. So no, I would say like a great workshop has 20 minutes of content delivery and 10 minutes of people landing this knowledge into a real document that they can see and discuss with their peers. So I would say, yeah, craft the content for the audience.
Yeah. I feel like that is one of the more challenging exercises for sustainability managers, because I feel like with the CSRD, we have a lot of like content that is like super specific, where you really need to like dive deep into the data point and understand how this is relevant for sustainability and how we need to talk about it. And then to switch from like this deep dive level to like a helicopter view where you're like, okay, now I explain it very simple, and this is the things that we need, and this is why we need it, and then give this to other people, while then at the end still get the deep dive data points. I feel like this is really a challenging task. A lot of sustainability managers I talk to like were complaining about, or at least mentioning, because it's not easy.
It's not easy. I always like, you always need to give like, I don't know, people want to know more, right? Like if I give it everything, it gets overwhelming. But if you give like, a bite, a taste of it, then some people not, it's not always in time, but some people will say like, you know what, I want to know more specifically about this because it definitely affects my area or my department and I want to get some. Yeah, I feel like it's just a balance. Follow that is creating a safe space for collaboration. So building bridges is key because this is complicated, but we have a common goal, right? As an organization, as people, as people, we have a common goal, and this helps us to reassure why are we asking what we're asking, why are we engaging in the things we're engaging, and why are we doing what we're doing, basically. Because it is a demanding process, of course, and I would say that sometimes it gets a little bit scary, right? Because you're asking things that probably have never been asked before, and the person there is, of course, a person, and if they don't have the data, or if they don't have the knowledge, they are going to be like, okay, I just don't know, and block, and that it will not help for the collaboration part and the benefits of thinking like this is a safe space, or collaborated to chip in to discuss ideas is that you have shared ownership. So people become experts in certain fields while doing this. Then there is open communication, and open communication always fosters honest feedbacks and idea sharing. And of course, collective intelligence, because you're not the only expert there. There are other experts with different knowledge, and diversity just makes everything richer. So establish a collaborative, non-judgmental space where the participants feel comfortable engaging, creating common ground for collaboration. You can facilitate the dialogue, share ownership, and mutual learning. And, again, some people don't know what they don't know. And you need to create those bridges between different types of knowledge. And the questions to navigate this are like, how can I foster an environment of trust and open communication? How can we encourage knowledge sharing and team synergy as well there? I feel like those are the questions. And it's a process that helps for other processes in the company as well. So yeah, I would say create a safe space for collaboration.
Yeah. I feel like this sounds like something obvious, but it's still very important to mention because, of course, like it should be obvious that we need a safe space to like talk about this and progress with the topic. And yet, if I like think about like some workshops I've seen or like how I think or assume some companies operate, I think it's very important to mention this and stress the fact that this is like a key point that they need in order to like get a good result.
Yes, totally, totally. There is always, I always said there's people behind this process, and people don't feel safe. It just restricts the way they will collaborate. So that's key. And then all of this comes to a perfect shape in creating flexible and modular structures. So again, this is like a roller coaster. And I would say like the stiffer you are, the more you will suffer. I will invite the people to see a workshop as a living process that evolves with the participants' need and feedback, and adaptability, continuous improvement, and making this as a long-term asset. Though you already have a plan, but things come up, and if you have structures and protocol to go that are flexible for this feedback and open for this feedback, then it will just get better. So I would say like build the workshops around modular blocks that can be adjusted based on the participant needs. And again, depending on the roles, depending on the level of engagement, and focus on retention and application. So again, how does this reflects into their daily life, work life? And of course, continuous improvement. Again, if this is the first time, not going to be perfect, but if you can receive feedback and adapt on that feedback, it will get better. So I would always say check in with the participants, and collect their input and then adjust. If you did the first one based on education, where you explain what the CSRD and the ESRS is, And the feedback that you receive is that it was too dense. Trust me, in the DMA, it's going to be harder. So then just know, okay, I need to tone down or specify, like always get feedback. And a good question I would say, to navigate this part is like, how can you design for adaptability and continuous improvement? If you have a series of steps that you can go, try to imagine how can they move around and how can the input from the participants can play a role in shifting the way you do the workshops. I think that's how I imagine.
Perfect.
I would say.
Yeah. Thank you so much for the insight. I feel like there are probably 100 more topics that we could touch on and discuss, but we're already over the time. So I just want to ask like one quick question at the end. Like the people that are listening to this and that might have like a CSRD workshop coming up, like what is the one thing that they should take away from this conversation so that they can enrich the workshop that they're going to have?
And I would say workshops are a great space to negotiate with everyone involved if you make it right. And a well-designed CSRD workshop equips participants with the knowledge, tools, and motivation to meet the CSRD requirements, but also can get, you cannot change what you cannot measure. So it you just make you get better. So that I would say knowledge transfer is key.
Yeah, I hope that we will have much more negotiations in those workshops where people really come together and try to like figure out, hey, how can we make the best out of this? Like it's definitely not an ideal situation. CSRD is complicated. There are like other factors that make it more complicated for the company. And yet still, if we want to go into a more sustainable future and like develop everything into a positive direction, we still need to like figure this out and work on this. So I feel like a good negotiation is definitely key here. One last thing. So if companies have questions about this, can they reach out to you, or do you have like, maybe I just like, I tag you and put your credentials in there so that they have questions. They can then like maybe reach out to you with some questions.
Definitely, I'm open for communication.
Perfect. Then thank you so much for your time again. I really appreciate it, and I hope to talk to you very soon.
Thank you very much for your time.
If you have come this far, thank you so much for listening to the AtlasZero podcast. Before you leave, I want to mention two more things. First, if you're looking for an ESG solution, we have a free search on our website. There, you have to answer around 10 questions about your company, and we will then filter our database and send you a list of solutions that might be the right one for you. This is by no means perfect, but it's meant to break the decision paralysis a lot of companies are experiencing and help you to get started easily. And second, and I have to ask this, please like and subscribe to the AtlasZero podcast. It helps us a lot to reach more people, and at the end of the day, our goal is to reach as many people as possible. So, thank you so much, and I hope to see you very soon.